Hey, this is Ross Payton with Role Playing Public Radio. We're here interviewing Greg Stolze about Unknown Armies and game design and Kickstarter and all kinds of great stuff. But I'm joined here with Caleb because he is also a huge Stolze fanboy and Unknown Armies fanboy. So we're we're really excited about a game that we've always admired, and now we'll have a chance to actually run and play because. I don't know. Unknown Armies has been often commented as, oh, the greatest game that I don't know how to run or play because something about it is kind of intimidating to a lot of people. The quality of the writing and the sort of complexity of the setting. But maybe we should let Greg try and sell the game first. Greg, what is the new edition of Unknown Armies? How is this different from the previous edition?
Well, one thing they've been pointing out in the okay, so when you pledge for the Kickstarter, you get access to, I think it's the gamma version of the playtest document, right? Mm-hmm. So that people are, of course, hunting for typos, but also saying, well, you left out my favorite thing, and I wish my favorite thing was in it. And so one thing people have, kind of pulled out is they're like, wow, this just opens up with, okay, here's how the cosmology of this setting works, and it's right near the front of book 1. So there's no mysterious stuff, and something we did in the second edition was that it was broken down by street level, global level, cosmic level. And so if you were on the street level, you knew a few weird things. And if you were on, the global level, then you had a broader view of how things worked. And if you were on the cosmic level, you knew the real truth of what was going on, or had at least heard it. And here, it's just like, now, we're not going to be coy about the fact that the cosmos imagined here is sort of a supernatural Republican democracy. Should I go into the kind of idea behind Unknown Armies?
Definitely. I think there's a lot of... I know I'm relatively new to tabletop gaming, considering I started playing when I was 7, tendency of the hobby. So I'm sure there are other people like me who maybe need to discover it anew.
All right. So the setting, which John Tynes, came up with so long ago, the idea is that humans are the most important thing in the cosmos. It's a very humanist, humanocentric setting, and the idea is that individual humans, not so important, but in the collective, humanity has tremendous occult power, and that in fact all magic power, the definitional energies underlying the cosmos, all emanate from humanity in total. And so the way this plays out is that when a social role becomes really important and everyone or a lot of people recognize that role, so like the mother, the warrior, the hunter, these archetypal roles that recur in every culture, as soon as these get a critical mass of attention from everybody, the individual who best embodies that role stops being human and becomes an immortal archetype existing on a higher plane where probability and reality are one. And this higher plane in the game is called the Statosphere. And the collective group of social roles that have evolved into this form are called the Invisible Clergy. So they're like gods of traditional mythology in that they tamper with the lives of mere mortals and pursue their own agendas. But at the same time, they're maybe even a little less human-like than your typical Greek myths, and are more like, sort of some kind of abstract ideas. They do not have a normal ethos. They have, their pure agenda. So that's all going on. Meanwhile, the humans back on Earth, who embody these roles in reflection of the archetype. So if you act like the archetypal mother, things will start to work out for you in a mothering way. The more you act out the role, the more reality conforms to your inhabitants of that role. If you are constantly warlike, then the warrior archetype will infuse your life with meaning, and you will become what's called an avatar. Things just go more and more your way as long as you continue to stay in the current. So that's one of the options, is you can be an avatar and say, oh, I'm going to act like the true king or the necessary servant or the loyal laborer or one of these other tarot-like roles. And in this fashion, I will be able to game the system. The end game of the cosmology is that as soon as 333 of these archetypal roles are assigned, the universe is destroyed. The 333 archetypes fuse into a single entity that recreates the universe and dies in the process. And the whole thing starts over, having reset to 0. So that is the mythology that is going on in the background of the game. And it can be extremely relevant to the games you play at your table. In as much as you can be one of these avatars. You can be trying to elevate an archetype to the point that someone gets incepted into the invisible clergy. Or you can be trying to remove an archetype from the invisible clergy, which is somewhat akin to trying to assassinate a god. But hey, that's what we roleplay for, right?
Yeah.
Murder hobo's got a murder hobo. And postmodern murder hobos have to postmodern murder. I mean,
I'm going to slaughter this idea of modernity.
Yep.
Who's with me? Come on, Derrida, it'll be a laugh.
A group of French philosophers take on an archetype.
I just got my campaign idea.
But that's not the only major element of Unknown Armies. There's also the Adepts as well.
Yes. And Adepts, in the book, I described it as, avatars are like the cool people who dress right, and as a consequence, they get to skip past the velvet rope and get let into the club and get into the VIP room. So that's avatars. Adepts are the people getting thrown out and screaming at the bouncer, well, I'll just start my own club, and it'll be awesome, and we'll have gambling and klezmer music. Adepts are the people who look at who focus on one particular aspect of commonly accepted reality and reject what is commonly accepted about it. They do it wrong, and they do it wrong but so intensely that reality deforms to conform with their will. So every magic school in Unknown Armies is based on something of great concern to most people. An example from so what was your favorite from the earlier editions?
I really like the Videomancer and the Urbanomancer, I think, or the Cleomancer, right? The one about places.
Yes.
Was there a separate one for urban romancers?
There were there were urbanomancers, are probably a good example to give. Videomancers, as written in 2nd edition, would be pretty much unplayable today, just because the nature of watching TV has changed. When we wrote 2nd edition, that seemed like it was going to be that way forever. But an Urbanomancer in Unknown Armies is someone who takes their strength from the city and is in tune with the city. But in the same way that you or me sees a city as, okay, it's where there's a bunch of people and enough people have gotten there that there's a big enough tax base that they can have cool stuff like airports and museums and a thriving foodie scene. But it's not anything more than that. Whereas to an adept, no, a city is more than that. A city has all those other elements, as a result of its cityness, and not as the direct reason for it. Okay, I've lost my the thread of my thought because of the sangria. But
there's also dipsomancy, which I assume.
Oh yes, which the idea, the central paradox there is that if you drink enough, you become more yourself, but you also kind of become less yourself due to lowered inhibitions and less self-control. So adepts always have some particular worldview that they're obsessed with, and to the extent that it makes it hard, it makes it very hard to be normal. And by staying in touch with this, they can build up these packets of magical energy, which they then expend to perform thematically appropriate actions. So if you're an Urbanomancer and you've built up some magical charges, you can use them to just pass unseen through the city or move through its secret paths, or to I'm trying to remember some of the other.
Well, they all had like a blast. They and for the Urbanomancers, they could the city attacks them in some way, like a bit of something, a brick from a nearby building falls on someone's head. Just
in the new edition, I've got Viaturges, who are the American Highway. They're pretty much just the song "Born to Run" translated into Unknown Armies magic, where they have their beautiful car and they're all about the freedom of the road, but they lose their power if they ever stay under the same roof like a second or third time. In the same way that Urbanomancers have a taboo against touching natural soil, and if they ever do, they lose all their stored energies. But the Viaturge Blast is, you can just put a curse on someone that the next time they step into the street, no matter how abandoned it is, no matter how far it is, no matter how careful they are, you're going to get hit by a car.
Nice. Well, that's a good segue, because I know everyone else is going to want to very much know the new adept schools, because that definitely what first sold the game to me. So what new freaky weaponized insanities are there in the new version?
And see, the people have been complaining that they're not quite crazy enough, but I like them. We finally did Cinemancy, where you are obsessed with movies and the depiction of reality and kind of the way that the artifice of film influences the reality of social life. And so they are people who can force reality to conform to film norms. So it's things like, oh no, I'm just gonna turn on the spell that makes me an action hero for 10 minutes and never have to reload, or I'm gonna change things so that I'm gonna enter a comedy and drop a banana peel and this guy will fall on the banana peel, but he won't get really hurt, and he won't be able to stand up. He will just ridiculously flail. So that was one. Motumancy is kind of an outgrowth of one of the the game's old societies, has developed a new adept school, which is about the destruction of authority. And it's their nickname is Flag Burners, and their whole raison d'etre is to liberate people from constricting social structures. And so the way that they charge up is, okay, I need to transgress my own boundaries. So you can get minor charges by doing something that would have driven you in, that would cause a mental health check if you weren't already acclimated to it. The way they get serious charges is by deliberately doing something that forces them to take a madness check. So they risk going crazy all the time. Or the other way they can charge up significantly is by convincing someone else to do something that forces that person to take a check. So they are constantly, they're either constantly self-destructing or constantly encouraging others to self-destruct.
I think I hear Ross actually making one of those characters in the other room.
It does sound very tempting.
And so their magic is all based around, okay, well, here's how society perceives you, and here is, I'm going to just force you into a new social role. I'm going to paste the label white supremacist on you, and everybody who meets you will believe that that's true of you. And, when they read your job application, they will think that they won't be able to put their finger on what seems so white supremacy about it, but it'll be there.
Wow.
This is where the horror of Unknown Armies arises. We always say it's a horror game, and it's the horror that arises from what people do when you give them actual power.
And what they're willing to do to get it.
And what they're willing to do to acquire power. The whole deal, to rewind back to that Republican democracy cosmology I was talking about earlier, the implications of that are that every horrific thing that has happened in the history of mankind happened because someone from the previous incarnation wanted that, or felt that it should be there, or felt that it was okay for it to be there. Humanity did that to itself. Every bad thing that happens for a purpose and a reason, and that reason is us. By the same token, every great thing that happens because of us. There are no... the reason Tynes sort of went in this direction, he came up with this idea while he was deep in the heart of pagan publishing country, and, loves his...
dark country.
Yeah, loves his Cthulhu, but wanted something where, the subtext of Cthulhu is that we are all random blobs in the universe. We are specks. We are, ants crawling over someone else's picnic. And, the ant never gets to decide what gets packed in the picnic basket. And that's horrifying, but it's been done a lot. So that was, one thing he didn't want to do. He'd also just read Umberto Eco's Foucault's Pendulum, which was, sort of he called it the death blow to the traditional alchemy, Templar, Illuminati ideas of occultism, with the robes and the candles and the Latin incantations. He's like, no, I just could not take that seriously after reading Foucault's Pendulum. And so basically what we've done is replaced the incense and chalked pentagrams with sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Right.
So some of the other new schools, my favorite that I wrote, I think, is agromancy, which is farm-based magic, which sounds unspeakably lame, right? But I'm but in my narcissistic way, I'm very pleased with it, because what it is about is taking nature and taking the chaos of nature and sort of breaking it to harness and making it serve man. And they charge up by lovingly raising an animal from its birth or hatching up to full adulthood and then personally slaughtering it. And that's how they charge up is, oh, this cow's at slaughter weight, here comes a significant charge. And some of them do it with human sacrifice, but really that's frowned upon. But in return, they get control over the land and can improve crops and animals and control what is normally random in nature.
In that case, it makes perfect sense. You have thousands of years worth of, occult tradition behind it. Every fertility cult, that's how occult practices got started. Let's pray to what do we have to give to the gods to make make the crops grow? And
I'd really like to not starve.
Yeah, I'd really like to not starve. The Golden Bough and all that. The Wicker Man. And these sound fascinating. One thing I've heard is, one of the things that about the original Unknown Armies that really gripped people when it came out were the game mechanics and how light they were, yet how expressive they were of the setting and the purpose of the game. With the sanity tracks and the percentile system. Have you done a lot of work to revise the mechanics, or was it pretty much gold and you're like, yeah, no, it's fine?
No. We changed it. I think that gaming in general has moved in a direction of lightness and reduced handling time since 2004 when the last edition came out, 2006. Mm-hmm. I can't remember when UA2 was released, but
I think 2002. It says that on the Kickstarter page. Right?
That long ago. So very long. So I think things have moved in a more streamlined direction. And I've also learned more about rich dice kind of design and, okay, how can I make this element of a game mechanic do multiple things so that instead of having 20 things to complete 20 tasks, I have 5 things, each of which completes 4 tasks, which is, abstract and kind of high end. But so the way I approached streamlining 2nd edition was I'm like, okay, what's fun? What do people like? When people are talking about their characters, what do they talk about? And I came up with, okay, they talk about the do-it-yourself skills. And people liked that, and the idea in the mechanics is that you pick, instead of having a set list where you go down and you're like, okay, I guess he's got like 5% in disguise and 15% in preen for the camera or whatever. You can instead just say, okay, my guy is a podcaster. He's got run podcasts at 60%. And then you define a few basic tasks that being a podcaster lets you roll for. So you can substitute it for some of the abilities, which I'll talk about later. But the sort of main idea with identities, which are what we're calling do-it-yourself skills now, is that, if it comes down to it, you can say, well, of course I can do blank because I'm a blank. So it's like, you don't have a computer science skill, but of course you can figure out how to record off of Skype because you're a podcaster. Or, of course you can clean up this audio because you're a podcaster. Or, of course I can, Of course, I can poke through this guy's medicine cabinet and find out what's going on with his health. I'm a doctor, or I don't know. Give me another identity. What would you be able to naturally do as a school teacher? It's oh, of course of course I have buddies in the unions. I'm a school teacher.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Of course,
it kind
I
of
can
combines.
finish all this sangria. I'm a school teacher. Yeah. I see.
So that's the first thing. Was I kind of expanded on the do-it-yourself skills and defined a little more what they do. Previously, Unknown Armies 2 had these kind of boring stats, body and mind, and no one ever seemed to really care about them much. They were sort of the skeleton that the good stuff hung off of. So what people did like, however, was the madness meter of Unknown Armies 2, which has been regenerated as the shock gauge in Unknown Armies 3, and does even more. So the idea behind this is there are 5 tracks on it, and they measure the sort of psychological abuse you've endured in your life. And the 5 categories are helplessness, isolation, violence, the unnatural, and self. That last one being, how much have you betrayed your own values or chickened out on things that you thought you would really fight for? So the way I've set it up now, it used to be that you'd get, basic skills that just about anyone could attempt were based on these stats, or you'd be assigned some. But now I've based them off how I've got 10 skills, 5 of them based on how many hardened notches you have in one of these gauges, and 5 of them based on how many open notches you have in the gauge. And the way a hard notch works is that if you confront a particular threat to your stability, you roll to see whether you can incorporate this into your worldview or whether you fail. So for a self-check, suppose you'd always thought of yourself as, a morally upright person, but you cheat on your wife. So this is a shock to your system because you're like, I didn't think I'd do that. Wow, I really failed to have integrity. And so you would roll, and if you succeeded at the roll to resist the damage, you would be like, well, just one time, these ideas of marital fidelity are really just a patriarchal concept, right? Or you could, fail it and wind up, weeping in the shower, muttering, I'm a scumbag, I'm a scumbag, I'm a scumbag, over and over. So either way, if you fail it, you get a fail notch, and if you rack up enough fail notches, your ability to deal with things starts to seriously unravel. But if you succeed at confronting this shock, you check in another hard notch, and you become a little more resilient because, after you've broken marital trust, well, now suddenly lying on your taxes doesn't seem like such a huge transgression, does it? So the way this works for all the gauges is that, if you've gone through a bunch of isolation checks and been rejected by society and had to do time in an isolation ward or in solitary confinement and have racked up a bunch of those hard notches, well, not getting invited to the Christmas party is not gonna threaten you. You're just gonna be like, okay, I've got 5 hard notches. That's a rank 1 challenge at best. Yeah, bounces off my tough skin and moves on. But because there are now attributes or abilities to get things done based on how many open notches you have, the more armored up you are and the more resilient you are to, basically, the more bad stuff you've incorporated into your psyche, the more you're able to deal with bad stuff. So if you've got a bunch of hard notches in violence, you will be a nasty street fighter even if you haven't trained for it, just because you've got that natural viciousness has been brought to the fore. However, your ability to get along with people and create a good impression is based on how many open notches you have in violence. Because, you know, if you show up and your knuckles are just covered in callus and you've got the cauliflower ears and that 1,000-yard murder stare, people find that off-putting. So if you've played A Dirty World, which is one of my other games, I pretty much stole this idea from that. Now, identities, one of the things they can do is substitute for these abilities. So you can have a character and say, oh, you know, I'm let me think of an example that's not based on violence, even though that's the really straightforward one. You could have it be, you know, okay, my identity is an actor. So, of course, I know how to, you know, put on a false beard. I'm an actor, that kind of thing. But also you can say, even though I haven't lived a substantially dishonest lie, substantially dishonest life, I'm good at lying because I can get into character. So you can say, okay, my identity as an actor serves as my ability to lie. And now, no matter how many open or hardened notches I have on the gauge that gives you your lying ability, I will always be able to lie as an actor. Make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you're doing a lot of work with a very few systems. I mean, the identities, skill mechanics. I mean, it sounds like you're combining elements of like fate aspects, using the social mechanics, kind of a networking thing, and having like the shot gauge actually work as kind of a skill thing is also fascinating. And is this ready to play? I noticed in the Kickstarter that you have Gamma, what you call the Gamma version of the playtest rules. Have people already been playing it, sending in playtest notes?
I've been playing it. I played it for about 6 months, and they've also had an Atlas playtest, and a few other people have had it longer than before the Kickstarter and been playing it. So yeah, if you get it off the Kickstarter, you can play it right now. You know, you'll just be playing the version that we haven't gone in and really finessed yet.
Okay. So you have all three versions of the books, or all three books in this format, or just?
I believe so. I'm 90% sure you get all three.
Okay.
Yeah, there's 3 in the release.
Okay.
He said spending too much money on the Kickstarter. Well, no, just the right amount of money. I had a question. So I love the term postmodern magic, and I know that you have been working with Delta Green as well, and the talk about that has been updating the setting based off, you know, post 9/11 and changes in the world.
Okay.
But how has the setting evolved since I guess 2002 when UAT came out? Like, what are we incorporating into the real world, and how is that reflecting in the cosmology?
Well, everybody has a cell phone now.
Okay, answered. All right, moving on.
I don't think that the setting needed as much updating as Delta Green did, because if you compare Delta Green to Unknown Armies 2, they both have, you know, sort of the Tynes fingerprints all over them. But whereas Delta, okay, so the problem that you've mentioned with Unknown Armies has been, this is a fascinating thing, but I have no idea what you actually do with it. Whereas that is not a problem with Delta Green. You know exactly what you're signing up for in a Delta Green game, which is, I'm going to be a federal agent who, you know, fights monsters despite being entirely unequipped to handle that task.
Yeah.
It's baked in. So Delta Green can work as a very railroady style game, which is fine. I think of dungeons as basically, any dungeon-based game tends to be very railroady because you have only a limited number of options. A dungeon is basically an elaborate train set with lots of switching yards. And in Delta Green, the scenarios I've written for that, I came into them with the perspective that, okay, you agents are fated to have an encounter with the supernatural, and what's in question is whether you have this encounter unprepared or whether you manage to scrape together some resources that will, might let you survive or overcome it. So in Unknown Armies, however, there is no central endoskeleton definition of, what a UA game looks like. And the reason for that, I think this can possibly be tracked back to that difference between the different cosmological philosophies, if I want to go really big picture. Because, Delta Green works for a Call of Cthulhu Mythos game because you're essentially unfree. You are essentially just being buffeted around by circumstance. So it makes perfect sense that the game framework is you will be told to go here and do this. But in Unknown Armies, you are fundamentally a free and autonomous being. So
yeah, the horror is your amount of control, not your total lack of control.
Right. And so one thing, a lot of game scenarios work great because they are reactive and conservative, right? I don't want the world to end because that's where I keep my stuff. Therefore, I will go into the Temple of Elemental Evil and keep them from ending the world. Or, the Nefandi are attacking our mage school and we must protect it from them, while at the same time protecting it from the poor benighted sleepers who have no idea what's going on. So that's a very functional structure, and you can build that into the new Unknown Armies. But what I've tried to do is make it more amenable to make a sandbox-style game where you're just given a setting and said, okay, you decide, existentialist style, what this is about, what's important, what matters, what your goals are. You decide what is a win for you. And those types of games always sound really great, right? But they're extremely, extremely hard to run because you never know what crazy decision your players are going to go at this week. And so what I've tried to do, you've got this continuum. So you've got the railroad on one side, which, the saying goes, nobody complains about a railroad if the scenery's awesome and the last stop is Awesome Town. And on the other end, you've got the sandbox where, there's all this freedom to create and where, you're not constrained by a limited subset of options. So what I've tried to do is find a way to get the benefits of both approaches. And the way I've done that is at the very beginning of the very first session, before creating any characters, character creation is done collaboratively, so you don't have all these, disconnected characters who have no reason to trust one another, yet somehow they're all together for the game, which is another huge pain that anyone who's run a game has probably encountered. Why are the paladin and the chaotic evil rogue in the same party? I don't get it. Wouldn't one of them just kill the other after like 48 hours? So in this case, you start out with an objective, which is, this is the change we want to see in the world. And you could make this a reactive change. The example I give in the main book is that, oh, there's this guy, Otradovec, and we all hate him for some reason. So you can set it up like that quite clearly. But you could also do it as, our neighborhood is a hellhole, and we are going to make our neighborhood better. We are going to brighten up the corner where we are. And once you have picked that objective, you build characters around that who know each other and who have a reason, who have the ability to pursue this objective and a reason to be invested in it. So it's like a sandbox in that the players define where things are going and the players set what the game is about. But in doing that, they're setting down railroad tracks so that the GM can run it more like a railroad game. The mechanic at the heart of this is an objective rating. So suppose your objective is make our hellhole neighborhood a better place. That starts out at a big fat 0. But you can define a bunch of objectives or what's the word they use in software development now that everyone's started saying?
Milestones?
Milestones, yeah. So you define, these points on your course, and so it could be, the first thing we need to do is find a way to take care of these poltergeists that are driving down our property values, or we're going to drive out the criminal element, or we're going to open a business that has good jobs. All of these things are, okay, I can now center an adventure around this. I can center an adventure around you're trying to get rid of the poltergeists. I can center an adventure around, you're trying to get rid of the criminal element. You're trying to open a business. As you accomplish these, your objective score gets bigger and bigger and bigger. One of the complaints about previous editions of Unknown Armies, a complaint I wanted to address, was the idea that you fail at your rolls a lot. And I'm okay with that, because I don't think UA should be about hyper-competent people who walk away from the explosion coolly while not looking back. That it is about people who have to work harder than they maybe wanted to accomplish their twisted or beautiful ends. So what I'm working at with the to address the perception that there is a bad failure problem is that, okay, if you get your objective up to 100%, it happens. It doesn't matter how bad your rolls are, as long as you're continuing to hit points on your course and get your objective improved. Once it hits 100%, the momentum of events takes over and it goes. It may need a little nudge. You may have to come up with one final event that makes it possible, but once you get that, there you go. So, if your example, I think I've got an example in the objective rules where the objective is just, kill Steve. And so if you get that up to 100, you don't need to roll to kill Steve. One of your attempts, we put poison in his cigars and we did all this other stuff. It's really like the CIA with Castro, right?
Except it works.
Except it works. Well, and the other thing you can do with your objective, here's the fun part from the GM's perspective, is that you can take your objective and use it to, instead of, getting what you want, you can prevent someone else from getting what they want. And the example that I give is that, okay, so suppose you've got an objective which is build a new community theater, and you find out that there's this other group operating in your neighborhood, and they've got an objective, and their objective is summon the Devourer of Crowns for a mass soul reaving. And you decide, stopping that sounds a little more important than getting our community theater. Is that you can take the percentages in your objective and just rake out that many percentiles from theirs. So if you're at build community theater 57% and they're at mass soul reaving 40%, it's just like, nope, sorry, you're done. You can't have it. Sorry, Devourer of Crowns. You're gonna have to pick a new objective because that one just got buried.
I wanted to destroy humanity, but they're putting on Greece.
So that is how objectives work, and a lot of what's in the second book is how the GM can use the objective and, you know, the percentiles in it and the things the players themselves have decided to do in pursuing it. And I'm like, okay, now your job is no longer, you know, step 1, be a great GM. That's the only step. It's like, okay, we're gonna break being a great GM into a bunch of little sub-steps that make it easier so that you don't just have to do everything all at once, but that you can say, okay, so here's what I do if I want to help them get their objective, you know, advance their objective, but at cost. Here's what I do if I want to distract them from their objective. You know, here's what I do if I want them to, you know, be tempted to leave the objective for something else. So once you've got that objective in place and you know where the characters are headed, it's a lot easier to be spontaneous in the sandbox because it's no longer open on every side. There's at least something to navigate by.
Yeah, I was always intimidated by the game because these people literally see a different reality. How do I get them in an ensemble cast? But that sounds like it really solves that problem nicely.
Here's hoping.
Yeah.
I have some questions from the Something Awful forums. I asked them what kind of questions they would want. One question is about the rules of pronunciation. How are they supposed to be used in a game since your character is totally different now? So how would you actually implement them in game? Or are they more of like sort of a plot device? And also, obviously, explain the rooms for those who are not familiar.
Okay. The idea behind the House of Renunciation is that it is a metaphysical space, and when you enter it, it takes something that's central to your personality and inverts it. And there are rooms in the house where you get dragged off to become your own worst enemy, or to have you know, something you deeply believed in changed. So it might be that there's a room where loyal servants are reworked to become disloyal servants, but there's another room where loyal servants are reworked to become loyal masters, and instead of obeying others, they seek to be obeyed. So there's all kinds of different reversals that can happen. In fact, I'm working on a novel right now where the plot is that the protagonist has undergone renunciation through a process that takes the person you love the most and makes them the person you hate the most. So that's complicated. The way you could use them in play, let's see what I can think of. You can start out all having come out of the Room of Renunciation together, and so that could be sort of the cornerstone of your playgroup. Is, you know, oh, we all went through this experience, and now because we've changed so much, it's very hard to get along with our normal lives. But we at least have each other, and you know, this guy believes me, you know, because no matter what else he's going through, he was in the room too. So that's option one. Option two is if you get tired of your character and want to make some radical change, You can send him through the room of renunciation, and oh yeah, you know how he was annoyingly violent? Now he's annoyingly pacifistic, and it's not quite as radical as generating a new character, but it's a powerful plot twist. And speaking of which, as a GM, you can hold it up that, okay, yeah, there's something that you can achieve for your objective, but only if you go through the house. So that's a third way to use it. A fourth is, why are these people acting so weird? Oh, they've all been through the house. Or there is a room of renunciation where its agenda lies athwart our objective. And so it's going to be trying to invert the people we know or spit out agents at us to mess with our stuff. So there you go. 4 ways to use the House of Renunciation.
Oh, very cool. Let's see, another question. Are you still considering making a comic in the setting? And if so, what's the timeline for that project?
Oh, was I ever considering that? I mean,
what the guy thinks you and Tynes were considering it in.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, Tynes was considering one, and he had some beautiful artwork from Brian Snowdy, but no, I think both of them have moved on from that idea.
Okay.
I am toying. No, okay, I will be honest. I'm 60,000 words into an Unknown Armies novel, which is not the smartest business move I could have made because I did not have a publisher for it yet. But
just a writing exercise, just 60K.
Yeah. Well, when I started it, it was super fun. In my defense, when I started it, it just seemed like a good time. And then about 20 or 30,000 words in, suddenly it was work. But I'm not afraid of a little work as long as it's not anything that involves heavy lifting or loud noises. So, I've been working on this novel, which, as I mentioned, is about this renunciate and also Avatar politics. And also this guy named Rico who, oh man.
Let's see here. What are the systems you've written? What are you the most proud of game mechanics wise? What do you most enjoy playing?
Oh, I enjoy playing, all kinds of games. My enjoyment is based less on mechanics than on, I would say, the energy at the table, frankly. If I'm playing a game with hilarious people who are friends of mine who are good at this and commit to their roles, and and the GM is constantly throwing wacky stuff at us, I'm going to have fun regardless of what the mechanics are, unless they're really, really broken and annoying. For myself, from the mechanics I have built, I think the best one so far is the one roll engine. A lot of just a lot of cool stuff kind of came out of that spontaneously. It is, if you're unfamiliar with it, you roll a pool of 10-sided dice and look for sets and matches. And so any time you get two or more dice that show the same result, you've got some degree of success. But because there are multiple ways that a success set can match up, so you could have 3 1s, and that's a lot of dice, but with very low numbers. And so you can make the numbers mean one thing, and the number of dice that hit it mean another thing. Oh, edit that out, please.
Make a note.
So that this allows you to do one roll that produces a great deal of information. And so it's like, okay, I'm going to have your initiative be based on how many dice are in the set, and I'm going to have the hit location be based on which number comes up, but I'm going to have the damage based by how many numbers are in the set. so that by throwing one die, you get a bunch of randomized effects that are interrelated but semi-independent. And it works well. It's fast. It gives you a lot of richness to your randomizer without having to have a bunch of handling time for your randomizer.
Right, not like a huge pool of dice, like Exalted or something like that. It's a good point. We played a lot of
more Ross in Delta Green machine gunning a bunch of ships.
Glancy.
That inspired me. There, have you looked at the new Delta Green and how there's I called it kill damage. They've changed the name of it, but it's basically with a weapon this big, you have this percentage chance of just evaporating a human being on impact. That's yours, Ross. It should be called Ross's rule.
You made my day. Did you hear that, Caleb? I got a rule.
You have a rule.
Yeah.
Nice. I was just drumming my fingers waiting for those damage rolls.
And we have the recording. I think that was U-Boat Heraus.
That was U-Boats Heraus. the most legitimate German machine gunning of civilian watercraft in history.
Oh God. Good times. Let's see here. On another question, on the magic schools, specifically, they seem to be less self-destructive, and more of an easy come, easy go variety of getting in charges. Was that planned on purpose for the new era?
It's probably just more of where we're at in our lives now. And also, there's only so self-destructive you can be before it becomes repetitive. If I had come up with an idea for a school where it's like, okay, what clearly makes sense is to mess up this particular part of your character, then I would have done that. But I started with the ideas I wanted to deal with. So you've got, cameraturgy, which is the magic of photographs. You've got photographers who really can steal your soul with a photograph. And in that one, I'm like, having this just be self-destructive doesn't make sense. Photography is about the capture of experience and about creation. And so the burden for this is going to be that you have to constantly be capturing experiences that are unique and creating things rather than, messing yourself up like an epideromancer. And that fit for epideromancy. So I don't know. Maybe I'm kinder, gentler, or maybe I had just strip mined out all my self-destructive ideas immediately. I suppose what'll wind up happening. Unknown Armies 3 has relationship mechanics. You start out with, slots for 5 specific relationships. So you can say, and you have to define one of them to one other character and one of them to the group of your characters. And the 5 roles are Guru, which is who you turn to for spiritual and big picture stuff. Mentor, who you turn to for practical everyday life advice. Your guru is who you ask what it's all about, and your mentor is the guy you borrow a nail gun from. There's your favorite, which is the person who brings the most joy to your life. There's your burden, the person who you feel most responsible for, the person that you have to take care of, even though you may not find it real fun to be around them. And let's see, what's the 5th one? We've got mentor, guru, protege. And your protege is someone that you feel that you can make them a better version of themselves. And so you can assign these relationships to other characters, or you can assign them to specific groups. So you can be like, oh, my guru is the Catholic Church. That's where I go when I need spiritual succor. Or you can say, my guru is Steve, because ever since he took all that mescaline, man, he's been super mellow.
It's a shame we're gonna kill him soon.
And so, yeah, you could. I'm sure there's a school idea where the idea is that, okay, I am going to get points by, I'm going to charge up by burning points off my relationships, by hermiting up and isolating myself. So there's that could be done. So there's that new dimension for self-destruction. Machomancers can be pretty self-destructive because it's like, oh, well, I'm either going to get more hardened or more crazy. And as that happens, the stuff I'm going to have to do in order to shock myself into getting a significant charge is just going to get worse and worse. I'm going to have to, the process of liberating myself from expectation is de facto a process of becoming more and more of someone who would horrify past me. So that one's pretty self-destructive.
Okay.
He said defensively.
And finally, in terms of the other questions, have you gotten any pushback, including a school based around guns in the new edition? Or I guess any other criticism so far from playtesters or backers?
No, there's been mild criticism, and okay, anytime you do something, there will be people saying, well, why didn't you do X? But, you can't please everyone. Something that has come up in this edition is people asking, well, why didn't you update the classic schools of unknown armies, Dipsomancy, Epidiromancy, Mechanomancy, Cleomancy? And my answer to that is that we chose to do a bunch of new stuff because I hoped it would please the old fans who have stuck with Unknown Armies for so long and have been so faithful for it. It's not like you can't find those old schools easily. It's not like you can't get the books and can't get the PDFs. And I wanted to do new things rather than to redo old things. And I'm sure that if we had redone those old things, there would be a different group of people saying, well, why did you do all this stuff that's already been done before when you could have spent those pages on something new? And having been through, relaunches of multiple properties right now, there literally is no way to please every fan. So I decided to go on the side of new stuff rather than old stuff, thinking that it will be a lot easier for a fan to update the old stuff than to create something new entirely. I mean, that's my value add, right?
Mm-hmm.
My whole job is to do things that you either can't do or don't have the time to do.
Makes sense. I can't wait to dive into the books. Do you have any other questions?
No, I'm just so like to play. I'm probably gonna go home and start reading tonight. I know I actually suggest we do campaign next.
There's one last. What kind of games have you been running? What have been the point lines to give people ideas of what you do in Unknown Armies? I know we have.
Okay.
Last example.
The first game I ran, we had. Everyone came up with characters. We decided to set it in, I think, South Carolina. And one of the players immediately looked up South Carolina serial killers and came up with a doozy named Pee Wee Gaskins. Pee Wee Gaskins is the first person in American history to commit a premeditated murder while on death row for a different premeditated murder. Stew in that for a bit. So Pee Wee Gaskins was executed in South Carolina, and he was truly a monster. And so our fictionalized version of him, all the characters had some Gaskins connection. We had an alligator wrestler who was getting messages from beyond the grave from Pee-wee. Pee-wee Gaskins was his spirit animal. There was a woman who was a law student trying to recover from the mysterious murder of her identical twin. She saw her identical twin ripped limb from limb by a 7-year-old girl. And then there was just this cop who was in the area and, knew the other two and had seen enough weird stuff to know that, okay, I'm not going to dismiss out of hand this idea that Gaskins' ghost or spirit or something is still around and making mischief. And he was the guy who found a just pile of dead bodies in a priest's house. And then, after reporting this, the police come in, tape everything off, pull out these 4 mangled corpses, which then disappear from police custody. And so he's like, okay, that's troubling. So their objective was find out what's going on with all this Gaskins ghost stuff. And all I did was throw them distraction after distraction after distraction. Excuse me again. Edit that out again, please. There's going to be the Stolze Belch supercut around the internet. So, but so what they were doing was trying to find out what Gaskins' ghost was up to, and it was something. What was going on with the house where the dead bodies were found and what was up with them, and basically it was a lot of mystery unraveling, and it went pretty well. And this was even before we had the objective system quite as formulated as it is now. So I think if I'd had those tools, if I'd built those tools by that time, I probably could have run it even a little cleaner. But as it was, everyone had a good time.
Nice. Yeah, I can't wait to run my own Pee-wee, the serial killer themed game, or something even worse. We have an albino from here in Springfield.
Well, it's going to be what your what your players want to play, and this is going to be a hard. I don't know how much of a hard sell. There are some people who would just never play it that way, right? Who would never say, "I'm not going to let the players come up with what they want to do." You'll get Kanye the Giant and his sport you, right? You've seen that bit from Key and Peele, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although Kanye has to be an adept, right? I mean,
all big, yo. So. Some people just won't permit that, but what I have tried to do with this is make it easier to go week to week GMing and not feel like you're completely at sea and just pantsing it. Instead of feeling like you need to, before they even generate characters, have 5 adventures worth of plot line tracked out in front of them. Make sense?
Yeah. Awesome. Well, the Kickstarter is going on until April 29th.
Yes.
So back it now.
Please get on it, people. I'm pushing this thing.
Consider it. All right. That's our speed. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure.